Hey guys, tonight we're stepping away from the grand tapestries of castles and crusades and into a world more intimate, more nuanced, yet equally steeped in medieval tradition and demanding an almost unbelievable level of skill and patience. Imagine yourself on a crisp autumn morning, perhaps in the rolling countryside of England, the sun-dappled forests of France, or the vast open landscapes of Persia or Arabia. Upon your gloved fist sits a magnificent bird of prey, its keen eyes scanning the horizon, a creature of wild, untamed spirit, yet bound to you by an invisible thread of trust and meticulous training. Tonight, we're delving into the surprisingly complicated, often perilous, and deeply fascinating world of medieval falconry training. We're not just talking about a nobleman's fancy hobby. This was an art, a science, and a profound partnership. Now, if you were suddenly handed a freshly caught, very annoyed adult goshawk with talons like tiny daggers and told to make it your loyal hunting buddy using only medieval methods and a lot of hope, you probably won't survive this particular team-building exercise with your skin or your sanity entirely intact. This was a quest requiring dedication that bordered on the obsessive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And please do let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always a joy to think of these ancient skills and stories reaching you across the ages. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in the heart of the medieval period, an era stretching roughly from the 5th to the 15th century, a time when the relationship between humans and the natural world was often more direct, more intimate, and certainly more reliant on mutual understanding than it is for many of us today. And few human-animal partnerships from this era are as captivating, or as demanding, as that between the falconer and their bird of prey. Falconry, or hawking as it was also known, the terms are often used interchangeably, though falconry sometimes specifically refers to hunting with true falcons, while hawking can include hunting with hawks and other raptors, was far more than just a method of obtaining game for the table, and though it certainly served that purpose. In medieval societies across Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, it was an esteemed art form, a symbol of nobility and status, a complex science requiring deep knowledge of avian behavior, and a pursuit that demanded almost monastic levels of patience, dedication, and empathy from its practitioners. Forget trying to teach your pet goldfish to fetch your slippers. Training a wild, fiercely independent creature like a peregrine falcon or a goshawk to willingly hunt in partnership with a human was a challenge of an entirely different order. The very idea of taking a creature born to soar free, a creature that is a perfect, feathered predator in its own right, and convincing it to return to your fist, to share its kill, to become, in essence, an extension of your own hunting will, is audacious. It's a testament to a profound human desire to connect with, and in some ways, master the wild. But this mastery, in true falconry, was not about breaking the bird's spirit. It was about channeling its innate abilities, understanding its nature, and forging a bond of mutual, if unequal, trust. The medieval falconer wasn't just a bird owner, they were a psychologist, a veterinarian, a nutritionist, a meteorologist, and a patient, observant companion to their aerial hunter. They had to be one wrong move, one moment of impatience or misunderstanding, and their prized bird could be lost forever, or worse, injured, or its spirit crushed. Yes, my little sky terror. A medieval falconer might murmur to a newly acquired, still very wild hawk. I know you'd rather be eviscerating that field mouse over there than sitting on my arm looking grumpy. But trust me, we've got a long, complicated, and hopefully mutually beneficial training montage ahead of us. There will be snacks. Eventually. A key historical fact is that falconry was incredibly widespread and highly valued across many medieval cultures. In Europe, It was often the sport of kings, but with nobles and royalty maintaining extensive mews, specialized housing for hawks and falcons, and employing professional falconers. Laws often restricted the ownership of certain types of prized raptors, like falcons, to those of high noble rank. In the Islamic world, particularly in Persia and Arabia, falconry also reached extraordinary levels of sophistication, with detailed treatises written on the subject, and hunting birds exchanged as precious diplomatic gifts. The Baybars Nama, for instance, a Mamluk-era treatise, gives incredible insight into the art. This wasn't just a niche hobby, it was a significant cultural institution, deeply embedded in the social fabric and power structures of the time. The training process itself was, as our title suggests, surprisingly complicated. It wasn't a quick fix. It involved a series of carefully managed stages, each requiring immense patience, skill, and an intuitive understanding of the bird's temperament. From the initial terrifying for the bird, and probably sometimes for the novice falconer process of manning, accustoming the wild raptor to human presence and handling, to the delicate art of teaching it to fly to the lure, to enter it on specific quarry, and finally, to hunt reliably in partnership with its human handler. Every step was a challenge, a test of wills, and a gradual building of that unique, almost mystical bond, a quirky, though perhaps not entirely fringe. Medieval belief surrounding some birds of prey was that they possessed a certain nobility of spirit, particularly the true falcons. This wasn't just about their impressive hunting prowess, it was a sense that these birds had an innate dignity, a wildness that could be partnered with but never entirely subjugated. The best falconers understood this, approaching their birds not as mere tools but as respected, if inherently dangerous, companions. The precise origins of some specific medieval training techniques, and the extent to which they were independently developed in different cultures versus being spread through cross-cultural exchange, perhaps along those same Silk Roads we've talked about before, or via the Crusades, are still debated by falconry historians and scholars of medieval sport. What is clear is that by the high Middle Ages, a sophisticated and remarkably consistent body of falconry lore and practice existed across a vast geographical area. So, as we prepare to delve into the specific stages of this intricate training process, from the moment a wild bird is captured or taken from the nest to its first successful hunt with its human partner, try to imagine the dedication required. Picture the long hours spent in the mews, the patient repetition of training exercises, the constant observation, the deep empathy needed to understand the mind of a creature so utterly different from ourselves, yet capable of forming such a powerful working alliance. This is more than just a historical curiosity. It's a window into a lost world of human-animal interaction, a testament to a gentle art that demanded anything but a gentle commitment from those who sought to master its surprising complexities. The sky's wild call was answered by an equally wild and wonderfully complicated human endeavor. You're standing now at the very beginning of your imagined journey as a medieval falconer, your heart perhaps filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation at the prospect of partnering with one of these magnificent aerial hunters. You understand the profound dedication this art requires, the patience, the skill, the almost spiritual connection that must be forged. But before you can even think about hoods, jesses, or the thrill of the hunt, you face a fundamental and absolutely crucial decision: what kind of bird will you train? And perhaps more importantly, at what stage of its life will you acquire it for the medieval falconer? This wasn't just a casual choice like picking a puppy from a litter. It was a decision laden with significant implications for the entire training process, the bird's ultimate capabilities, and the very nature of the bond you would share. You were essentially choosing between raising a feathered baby from the crib or trying to convince a wild, experienced, and probably rather grumpy adult to join your team. The two primary paths before you were to acquire either an ayaz or a haggard or a passenger, a juvenile bird trapped on its first migration, which fell somewhere in between. An ayaz was a young bird taken from the nest as a nestling or fledgling, before it had learned to hunt for itself in the wild. A haggard, on the other hand, was a fully adult, wild-caught bird, already a skilled and experienced hunter, its spirit fiercely independent. Each choice presented a unique set of challenges and rewards, and the preferred option often depended on the falconer's own skill level, the specific type of raptor desired, and even prevailing cultural fashions or beliefs about the nature of these birds. It's a bit like deciding whether to adopt a brand new, slightly clueless kitten, or to try and win the affection of that aloof, battle-scarred alley cat who's seen it all and is deeply suspicious of your motives and your suspiciously proffered tuna. Both can make wonderful companions, but the journey to get there is very different. Let's first consider the Aya as imagine yourself, or a skilled cragsman employed by a nobleman, carefully, and often perilously, climbing to a remote cliffside area or scaling a towering forest tree to reach a raptor's nest. A key historical fact is that taking eyasses was a common practice, particularly for certain species like goshawks or some falcons, as it allowed the falconer to shape the bird's development from a very young age. The young birds, once taken, would be hand-reared, fed small pieces of meat, and would often imprint on their human caregiver, meaning they would come to see the falconer as a parent figure or at least as the primary source of food and security. This early imprinting could make the initial stages of manning and training significantly easier. And Ayas, having known human contact from a very young age, was generally less fearful, more readily accepting of the hood and the fist, and could potentially form a deeper, more dependent bond with its falconer. They were, in essence, a feathered blank slate, onto which the falconer could inscribe their lessons. Right, little fluffy feather. The falconer might coo to a tiny, downy kestrel chick that has just mistaken his finger for a particularly interesting worm. Lesson 1, I am your food source, your protector, and your slightly oversized, non-feathered parent. Lesson 2, please stop trying to eat my finger. It's not on the menu, even for very cute eyasses. However, training an IS also had its downsides, because it had not learned to hunt in the wild from its parents. Its natural predatory instincts might be less developed, or it might be more prone to undesirable behaviors like screaming, excessive calling for food, or mantling, aggressively shielding its food. The falconer had to teach the Ayas everything from scratch, including the very basics of how to pursue and kill quarry, a process that could be long and demanding. There was also a risk that an Ayas, particularly if not handled with sufficient skill and exposure to the wild during its development, might become too tame, too dependent, lacking the fierce drive and independence that made a wild raptor such an effective hunter. Now, consider the haggard, the wild-caught adult. This was often seen as the ultimate challenge, and for some falconers, the ultimate prize. A haggard falcon or hawk was already a proven survivor, a skilled hunter that had honed its abilities in the harsh school of nature. It possessed a wild cunning, a raw power, and an understanding of quarry that no hand-reared Ayas could easily match. To successfully trap, man, and train a haggard was a testament to a falconer's supreme skill, patience, and courage. However, the process was incredibly difficult and often fraught with danger. A newly caught haggard would be a terrified, fiercely aggressive creature, fighting against its captivity with every fiber of its being. The manning process would be a long, intense battle of wills, requiring immense fortitude and a deep understanding of raptor psychology to overcome the bird's innate fear and suspicion of humans without breaking its spirit. Even if successfully manned and trained, a haggard might always retain a certain wildness, a degree of unpredictability, and perhaps a less affectionate bond with its falconer compared to an Ayad. It's like trying to form a working partnership with a seasoned, slightly cynical special agent who really doesn't want to be your partner, versus training a keen but clueless rookie. One has all the skills but a major attitude problem. The other is eager to please but needs to be taught everything. A quirky, though perhaps understandable, superstition or belief among some medieval falconers was that haggards, having known true freedom and the art of wild hunting, possessed a certain nobility or fire that could never be fully replicated in a hand-reared ayas. A successfully reclaimed haggard was thus a bird of immense prestige. Passengers? The juvenile birds caught during their first migration offered something of a compromise. They had some experience of wild flight and perhaps their first attempts at hunting, but they were not yet as set in their ways as a full adult haggard, making them generally easier to train, yet often retaining more of that wild vigor than an eos. Falconry historians continue to debate whether iasses or reclaimed wild birds ultimately made for more effective and reliable hunting partners in the medieval period. With different schools of thought and regional preferences often evident in the historical treatises. So some traditions, particularly for certain types of hawks used in woodland hunting, seem to favor iasses, while others, especially for high-flying falcons prized for their spectacular stoops, might have valued the proven prowess of a well-chosen haggard. If a falconer had the skill to reclaim it, the choice also depended on the species. Some raptors, like the goshawk, were often considered more successfully trained if taken as iasses, as their temperament could be quite fierce. Others, like the peregrine falcon, could be trained effectively whether taken young or as an adult, though each presented its own set of challenges. So, as you are aspiring medieval falconer, contemplate your first feathered student, the decision weighs heavily. Do you opt for the relative pliability and deeper potential bond of an ayaz, accepting the long process of teaching it to hunt from scratch? Or do you dare to take on the formidable challenge of a wild-caught haggard, hoping to harness its existing skills and fierce spirit, knowing that the path to partnership will be far more arduous and uncertain? Your choice will shape not only your training journey, but the very nature of the relationship you will forge with this magnificent creature of the sky. You've weighed the profound decision. Our aspiring medieval falconer, will it be an ayaz, taken young and malleable from the nest, or the fierce, experienced challenge of a wild-caught haggard or passenger? If your path, or perhaps your ambition, leans towards the latter, towards harnessing the untamed spirit of a bird that has already known the freedom of the open sky and the thrill of the independent hunt, then your journey into falconry training must first begin with the intricate, patient, and often perilous art of the bird trapper. This isn't a casual stroll in the woods with a butterfly net. This is a specialized craft, requiring deep knowledge of raptor behavior, cunningly designed traps, and an almost preternatural ability to blend into the landscape and wait. Sometimes for days, for that one perfect moment of capture. You are about to become a hunter of hunters, seeking to ensnare one of the sky's most formidable predators without causing it undue harm. A delicate balance of deception and respect. Imagine yourself now, not yet with a noble bird on your fist, but perhaps as a skilled bird trapper in medieval Persia, the European forests, or the vast Arabian deserts, regions where falconry flourished and the demand for good wild-caught birds was high. Your hunting ground is not the feasting hall or the tournament field, but the remote migratory routes, the known nesting territories, or the favored hunting spots of the raptors themselves. Your tools are not swords and lances, but cleverly constructed nets, lures, and an encyclopedic understanding of your quarry's habits. It's like being a highly specialized wildlife photographer, but instead of capturing an image, your goal is to gently, safely capture the creature itself, with the ultimate aim of forging a partnership, a very, very one-sided partnership to begin with, from the bird's perspective, no doubt. Oh, a free pigeon, just sitting there looking delicious and entirely unconcerned. This seems almost too easy. A wild peregrine might think, just before the cleverly concealed bow net springs shut. Wait a minute, yeah, this wasn't in the brochure for effortless avian lunches? Several ingenious methods were employed by medieval bird trappers to secure their feathered prizes. A key historical fact, described in numerous falconry treatises and sometimes depicted in medieval art, is the widespread use of various types of nets. One of the most common was the bow net or clap net. This typically consisted of a semicircular or rectangular frame of flexible wood or metal. over which a fine but strong net was stretched. The net would be laid flat on the ground, carefully camouflaged with leaves, grass, or sand, and baited. The bait was often a live pigeon or another small bird, tethered in the center, whose movements would attract the attention of a passing raptor. The trapper, concealed in a nearby hide or blind, would hold a long pull cord. When the hawk or falcon stooped upon the bait and landed within the net's arc, the trapper would pull the cord, causing the frame to spring shut, hopefully entangling the bird safely and without injury. It required split-second timing and a good deal of patience. Hours, even days, might be spent waiting for a suitable bird to appear and take the bait. Another method involved noose carpets, or arrays of small, fine nooses made of horsehair or strong thread, artfully arranged on the ground around a tethered lure bird or a piece of meat. A raptor landing to seize the bait might get its feet or talons entangled in the nooses, allowing the trapper to approach and secure it. This method, while effective, carried a higher risk of injury to the bird if it struggled violently or if the nooses were too tight. The use of a lure bird, often an owl or sometimes another species of hawk, was also a common tactic, particularly for trapping certain types of falcons. Many raptors, especially falcons, are fiercely territorial and will aggressively mob or attack owls or other rival birds of prey that intrude upon their hunting grounds. The trapper might tether an owl to a perch in an open area, with fine nets or nooses placed nearby. When a wild falcon spotted the owl and dived to attack it, it could become entangled in the waiting snares. It's a bit like setting up a very convincing, very annoying decoy to draw out your target, a classic bit of avian psychological warfare. A quirky, and rather daring, method sometimes described, particularly for capturing birds at their nests or roosts, involved climbing, often at night, and using a net on a long pole, or even trying to snatch the bird by hand while it was dazed by a bright light, a practice called torching or low-belling for other types of bird hunting. Though its specific application to valuable raptors for falconry needs careful consideration of sources, this was obviously a high-risk endeavor, both for the climber and for the potential of damaging the nest or other young birds. The exact prevalence and effectiveness of certain highly specialized or ethically questionable trapping methods, described in rarer medieval manuscripts, such as the use of birdlime, a sticky substance smeared on branches for smaller hawks, are still being assessed by researchers, as such methods could easily injure the birds. The best historical falconry treatises often emphasize the importance of capturing birds in a way that minimized stress and physical harm, as an injured or overly traumatized bird would be much more difficult, if not impossible, to train. The timing of the trapping was also crucial. Passage hawks, juvenile birds in their first year, caught during their autumn migration, were often highly prized. They were old enough to have some experience of flying and perhaps their first attempts at hunting, but still young enough to be relatively adaptable to training. Trapping sites would often be established along known migratory routes, where large numbers of raptors might pass through over a period of several weeks. Once a bird was successfully trapped, the real challenge began. The trapper had to carefully disentangle it from the net or nooses, a process requiring immense care to avoid being bitten or taloned. A footed bird, meaning one that has sunk its talons into you, is a very painful experience, as any falconer will attest. The bird would then be hooded immediately to calm it. Its jesses would be fitted, and it would be carefully secured for transport back to the mews, where the long, patient process of manning would commence. The life of a medieval bird trapper, specializing in raptors for falconry, would have been a solitary, demanding one, requiring an intimate knowledge of the wild, a trapper's cunning, and a craftsman's skill in making and deploying their tools. They were the often unsung first link in the long chain that brought a wild hunter of the skies to the gloved fist of a noble falconer. Their artful capture the necessary prelude to the even more intricate art of training. The wild raptor, perhaps a magnificent adult haggard falcon, or a fierce young passenger goshawk, is now yours. It has been artfully snared by the trapper, its brief, terrifying struggle in the net's over, and it now finds itself in an entirely alien and deeply unsettling new reality, the world of humans. Its eyes, if you could see them, would be wide with fear and outrage, its heart pounding like a war drum, its every instinct screaming at it to escape, to fight, to return to the wild freedom of the skies. You, as the medieval falconer, now face the first, and arguably one of the most critical and delicate stages in its long journey towards becoming a hunting partner. The initial process of manning, or accustoming this terrified, wild creature to your presence, your touch, and the strange new furniture of captivity. This isn't about breaking its spirit. It's about gently, patiently, beginning to build a fragile bridge of understanding. A first tentative truce between two very different worlds, all starting with the careful introduction of the hood and the feel of your gloved hand. The moment a wild bird is taken from the trap is one of extreme stress for both bird and handler. The trapper, or the falconer if they trapped it themselves, would move with swift, practiced gentleness to minimize injury and further terror. The very first act, almost immediate upon securing the bird, would be to hood it. A key historical fact, universally emphasized in falconry traditions across cultures and centuries, is the profound calming effect of the hood on a raptor. These birds are primarily visual hunters, their world dominated by sight. By covering their eyes with a soft, well-fitting leather hood, you plunge them into a kind of sensory deprivation, a darkness that significantly reduces their panic and their urge to struggle. It doesn't make them instantly tame, of course, but it makes them manageable, less prone to self-injury from frantic baiting attempting to fly off or fighting. Imagine trying to reason with a creature that sees you as a giant, terrifying predator, versus trying to soothe one that is suddenly in a quiet, dark, and therefore less immediately threatening. Space. The hood is the falconer's first and most indispensable tool for establishing a semblance of calm. There now, my fierce little skylord. You might murmur, your movements slow and deliberate as you gently slip the soft leather over its head. A bit of temporary nighttime in the middle of the day. Just to help you adjust to your new, and admittedly rather unexpected, career change. Once hooded, the bird would be fitted with its jesses, those soft leather straps around its legs, and a leash. This, too, had to be done with skill and gentleness, ensuring the jesses were snug but not too tight, allowing for free movement of the legs but secure attachment of the leash. The bird, even hooded, might still struggle or clench its formidable talons, and the falconer needed a steady hand and a calm nerve. Then comes the first true test of the manning process, introducing the bird to the gloved fist. You, the falconer, would wear a thick leather gauntlet, essential protection against those needle-sharp talons. The hooded bird, jesses held securely, would be gently placed upon your fist. Its reaction would likely be one of renewed panic, even without sight. It might bait wildly, flapping its powerful wings, its body tense, its talons gripping your glove with painful intensity. Your role here is one of absolute, unwavering patience and stillness. You must not react with anger or frustration. You simply hold the bird, allowing it to tire itself out, speaking to it in low, soothing tones, your hand and arm as steady as a tree branch. This could go on for hours. It's a silent battle of wills, a process of desensitization. The bird learns, very slowly, that the fist is not a place of threat, that its struggles are futile, and that your presence, while still alien, is not immediately harmful. It's like trying to comfort a very small, very angry, and very pointy pterodactyl who has just realized it's no longer in charge of its own flight plan. This initial period of manning would ideally take place in a quiet, dimly lit space, perhaps within the mews or a secluded room, free from sudden noises or movements that might further startle the bird. The falconer would spend countless hours simply carrying the bird on the fist, walking with it, getting it accustomed to the gentle sway of human movement, the sound of a human voice, or the scent of a human presence. You might gently stroke its breast feathers with a feather or soft piece of leather, always watching for signs of acceptance or renewed fear. Food, as always, plays a crucial role. A newly captured wild bird will often refuse to eat for a period due to stress. The falconer must patiently, persistently offer small, tempting morsels of fresh meat, perhaps touching them to the bird's beak or feet, until hunger and curiosity overcome fear, and the bird takes its first tentative meal from the glove. This is a hugely significant moment, a sign that the bird is beginning to associate the falconer with something positive, with sustenance. It's the first real crack in the wall of its wildness. A quirky, though perhaps highly effective technique sometimes mentioned in older falconry lore for manning a particularly difficult or stubborn bird involved the falconer carrying the bird on the fist almost continuously for many days and nights, depriving themselves of sleep in the process. This constant proximity and handling, combined with the bird's own weariness, was believed to accelerate the taming process. We'll delve more into this waking process in our next section, as it's a distinct and very demanding stage. Falconry historians often emphasize that the subtle psychological understanding required for successful manning, and the ability to read a bird's temperament and adjust techniques accordingly, while not always explicitly detailed in instructional texts, was paramount to the art. It wasn't just a set of mechanical procedures, it was an intuitive, empathetic process, different for every individual bird. Some birds might man relatively quickly, their innate temperament perhaps more accepting. Others, particularly older, more experienced haggards, might resist for a very long time, testing the falconer's patience and skill to their absolute limits. The goal of these first steps in manning is not to break the bird's spirit, but to reduce its fear of humans to a manageable level, to teach it that the falconer is not a threat but a potential partner, however unlikely that might seem to the bird at this stage, and to establish the falconer's fist as a safe and rewarding place to be. It's about transforming raw, wild terror into a state of wary, conditional acceptance. This is the delicate foundation upon which all subsequent training will be built. The hood and the hand, patience and persistence, these are the gentle yet powerful tools that begin to bridge the vast gulf between the wild heart of the raptor and the dedicated soul of the medieval falconer. The initial terrifying shock of capture has begun to subside, ever so slightly. For your wild raptor, thanks to your unwavering patience, the calming darkness of the hood, and the gentle introduction to the feel of your gloved fist, the bird might now sit with a little less frantic terror, perhaps even tentatively accepting small morsels of meat from your hand. But its wild spirit is far from subdued. Its innate fear and suspicion of humans still burns fiercely in its untamed heart. To truly bridge that chasm, to transform this creature of the open sky into a willing, if not entirely enthusiastic, partner, medieval falconers often employed a more intensive and undoubtedly exhausting technique known as waking. This wasn't about gently rousing a sleepy bird. It was a demanding, often days-long process of sleep deprivation for both the bird and, crucially, for you, the dedicated falconer. It was a profound test of wills, a period of intense, unbroken interaction designed to accelerate the taming process and forge a deeper, more dependent bond. Imagine yourself now, a medieval falconer, embarking on this arduous stage of manning. The newly acquired hawk or falcon, still hooded or perhaps with the hood occasionally removed for brief periods in a dim, quiet room, remains constantly on your gloved fist, and for hours upon hours, stretching through the long watches of the night and into the weary light of dawn, and then often through the following day and night as well, you must keep the bird awake. A key historical fact, described in many medieval falconry treatises from both Europe like the Boke of St. Albans and the Middle East, is the central importance of this waking period, particularly for taming difficult wild-caught haggards. The theory was that by preventing the bird from sleeping, by keeping it in a state of constant, mild sensory stimulation through your presence, your voice, and your gentle handling, you would gradually wear down its natural resistance, overcome its fear, and make it more receptive to your influence. It's like trying to reason with a very tired, very grumpy toddler. At some point, sheer exhaustion might make them a little more pliable, or they might just have a massive, ear-splitting tantrum. With a raptor, the stakes for tantrum are considerably higher, involving beaks and talons. So, you sit, or perhaps pace slowly, in a quiet, secure space. The bird perched on your arm. Every time its head begins to droop, every time its fierce eyes start to close in exhaustion, you must gently rouse it. This might be done with a soft word, a slight movement of your fist, a gentle stroking of its breast feathers with a feather, or even by lightly sprinkling its feet with cool water. The aim isn't to frighten or further stress the bird, but simply to prevent it from succumbing to deep sleep. It's a delicate balance. You are, in essence, becoming the bird's entire world during this period, its constant, unavoidable companion. "Oh, no, you don't, my feathered friend," you might murmur as its eyelids begin to droop for the 20th time that night. Sleep is for the weak, or at least for those who haven't yet fully embraced the glorious benefits of perching calmly on a human fist and contemplating a future filled with delicious quail rewards. Just a few more hours of quality bonding time. The toll on the falconer during this waking vigil was immense. You would be enduring the same sleep deprivation as the bird, your own eyes gritty with fatigue, your arm aching from the weight of the raptor. Even a smaller hawk can feel surprisingly heavy after many continuous hours. You would need unwavering focus, patience, and a profound empathy for the creature you were trying to tame. Any sign of frustration, anger, or impatience on your part could undo hours of careful work, further terrifying the bird and damaging any fragile trust that might be forming. It was a true test of the falconer's dedication and self-control. Throughout this long watch, you would continue to speak to the bird in soft, soothing tones, getting it accustomed to the sound of your voice as a constant, non-threatening presence. You might gently stroke its feathers, offer tiny morsels of food when it showed signs of accepting them, and gradually, almost imperceptibly, try to reduce its fear of your hand and your movements. The hood might be removed for increasingly longer periods in a dim light, allowing the bird to see you, to associate your face with the comforting presence it is known only in darkness. A quirky and rather charming tradition mentioned in some falconry lore is the idea of singing or humming specific gentle melodies to the bird during the waking process, the rhythm and tone further helping to soothe its agitation and build a connection. While perhaps not scientifically verifiable, the thought of a weary medieval falconer softly crooning an ancient lullaby to a fierce, half-asleep peregrine certainly adds a touch of unexpected tenderness to this demanding art. Eventually, after what might seem like an eternity of shared wakefulness, perhaps 24-48 or even 72 hours or more, depending on the bird's temperament and the falconer's endurance, a turning point would often be reached. The bird, utterly exhausted, its natural wild resistance worn down, might finally, truly, relax on the fist. It might even, in a profound sign of dawning trust, tuck its head under its wing and fall into a deep sleep while still perched on your glove. This was a moment of immense significance for the falconer, a sign that the bird was beginning to accept its new situation, to see the falconer not as a threat, but as a source of security, a safe perch in a bewildering new world. It's like that moment when a feral cat you've been patiently feeding for weeks finally rubs against your leg. A small gesture, but one that speaks volumes about a new, fragile trust being formed. Modern falconers and historians often discuss the balance between the effectiveness of traditional waking techniques in accelerating the manning process and the potential physiological and psychological stress caused to the bird by prolonged sleep deprivation. While medieval methods might seem harsh by some contemporary animal welfare standards, it's important to remember that the ultimate goal was to create a working partnership. And a bird that was overly stressed or whose spirit was broken would not make an effective or reliable hunter. The best medieval falconers understood the need for this balance, aiming for submission and acceptance, not a cowering, terrified creature. Once the bird had slept soundly on the fist, the most intensive part of the waking was often over. It would still require many more hours of patient handling, gentle exposure to new sights and sounds, and consistent reinforcement. But that initial, fierce wall of wild resistance had begun to crumble. The test of wills had, in a sense, been won, not through force, but through an extraordinary shared ordeal of endurance. The bird was now truly manned, its wild call perhaps a little quieter, its gaze a little softer, ready for the next, equally complicated, steps in its journey to becoming a hunter at your side. The long, exhausting vigil of waking is finally over. Your wild raptor, whether a fierce, haggard falcon or a slightly less terrifying but still formidable goshawk, has, through sheer weariness and your unwavering, patient presence, begun to accept your gloved fist as a safe, if still somewhat bewildering, perch. It might even have succumbed to sleep there. A profound sign of dawning trust. The initial terror has subsided, replaced by a wary, conditional tolerance. But this is just the first step on a long and intricate path. The bird is manned, yes, but it is not yet a partner. Now begins the crucial stage of teaching it to willingly fly to you, to see your fist not just as a place to sit, but as a destination, a source of reward, the very anchor of its new, strange life with a human. You are about to embark on the delicate art of calling to the fist, fostering those first fragile flights that will build the foundation for all future work in the field. Imagine yourself now in a quiet, secluded space, perhaps a large, airy mews, a walled garden, or a very peaceful, enclosed meadow, far from distractions that might startle your still nervous feathered student. The bird is on its perch, unhooded, its keen eyes taking in its surroundings, but also, importantly, taking in you. You have your hawking glove on, and in it, or perhaps visibly displayed upon it, is a small, tempting morsel of fresh meat, a choice tidbit of quail or pigeon, something irresistible to a hungry raptor. A key historical fact is that food is the primary motivator and reward in almost all traditional falconry training. You are not commanding the bird through fear, you are enticing it, persuading it, teaching it to associate you and your fist with the positive experience of a satisfying meal. It's Pavlovian conditioning, medieval style, but with a lot more at stake than just a dog drooling over a bell. If this goes wrong, your student might decide that your fist is, in fact, something to be avoided at all costs. Or worse, something to fly very far away from. Very quickly. Come on, my little sky scourge. You might coax, holding out the gloved fist with its tempting treat. Just a little hop. There's a lovely bit of well-aged mouse leg here with your name on it. No, not tempted. Perhaps if I sing it a little motivational ditty about the joys of interspecies cooperation. The very first flights to the fist are often incredibly short. With the bird on a perch just a foot or two away, you present your baited glove and give a gentle call or whistle, a specific sound that the bird will come to associate with being called to you for food. At first, the bird might be hesitant, suspicious. It might just stare at the meat, then at you, then back at the meat. Its tiny bird brain trying to calculate the risk-reward ratio. You must be infinitely patient, making no sudden movements, your voice calm and reassuring. Eventually, hunger, or perhaps a flicker of dawning trust, will overcome its reluctance, and it will make a small hop or a short, awkward flutter from its perch to your fist, snatching the reward. This is a moment for quiet praise, for gentle stroking if the bird tolerates it, reinforcing the positive association. Gradually, painstakingly, day by day, you will increase the distance, from a few feet to across the room, then perhaps the length of the mews or the garden. The bird is still attached to a creance, a long, light but strong line, perhaps made of braided flax or silk, which allows it to fly freely over these short distances, but prevents it from simply taking off and disappearing if it gets spooked or decides it's had enough of this flying to the giant game. The creance is your safety net, your medieval equivalent of a remote control that can, with a bit of luck and a lot of careful handling, Prevent your very expensive feathered investment from becoming a very distant, very free speck in the sky. Each successful flight to the fist, no matter how short, is rewarded immediately with a small piece of meat. This precise timing of reward is crucial. The bird must directly associate the act of coming to your fist with the pleasure of eating. You are not just feeding it, you are shaping its behavior, teaching it that you are the source of all good things. There will be setbacks. Of course, some days the bird might be inexplicably stubborn, refusing to fly even a short distance. It might be distracted by a passing butterfly, a sudden noise, or simply not be hungry enough to be motivated. This is where the falconer's deep patience and understanding of their individual bird's temperament are so vital. You cannot force it, you can only entice and encourage. Losing your temper or trying to rush the process will only set you back, potentially undoing days or weeks of careful work by reinstilling fear and mistrust. It's a delicate dance of wills, a negotiation between your desires and the bird's still very wild instincts. A quirky, and perhaps rather time-consuming aspect of this stage might involve dealing with a bird that develops a perch preference. It might happily fly from perch A to your fist, but stubbornly refuse to fly from perch B for reasons known only to its mysterious avian mind. The falconer would then have to patiently work through these little quirks, perhaps by making perch B slightly less comfortable, or by making the reward from perch B particularly enticing. Oh, you only like flying from the oak perch on Tuesdays when the wind is from the north-northwest and I'm wearing my second-best tunic. Right then, terribly specific. But we'll work with it. My feathered prima donna. As the bird becomes more confident and reliable in flying to the fist on the creance over increasing distances, the moment approaches for the first truly free flights, albeit still in a controlled, enclosed environment. This is a nerve-wracking but exhilarating step. The creance is removed. The bird is placed on a perch some distance away. You present your baited fist, give your call, and you wait. Your heart probably in your throat. Will it fly to you, trusting in the bond you have so patiently built? Or will it seize this moment of freedom to make a bid for the open sky and never return? That first willing, untethered flight to your fist, when the bird chooses entirely of its own volition to come to you, is a profound moment for any falconer, ancient or modern. It's a sign that a true partnership is beginning to form, that the wild creature is starting to see you not as a captor, but as a trusted ally, a source of food and security. It's a small flight, perhaps, but it represents a giant leap in that fragile, interspecies trust. The subtle cues and body language exchanged between falconer and bird during these early flight training sessions, though rarely fully articulated in detailed medieval texts, were likely crucial for success, with experienced falconers developing an almost intuitive feel for their bird's state of mind and readiness. This to-the-fist training is the bedrock of all that will follow. It establishes the fundamental recall, the unwavering connection that will allow the falconer to work with their bird in the vastness of the open sky during the actual hunt. It's a slow, meticulous, and deeply rewarding process, transforming a wild spirit into a willing, if still wonderfully wild, companion. Your medieval falcon or hawk, through countless hours of your unwavering patience and gentle persuasion, now willingly flies to your gloved fist, at least over short, controlled distances. That initial fragile bond of trust has been established, built upon the promise of food and the reassurance of your calm presence. But the journey of transforming this magnificent wild creature into a skilled and reliable hunting partner is far from over. Now, you must introduce it to another crucial piece of falconry equipment, another vital training aid that will become essential for its physical conditioning, its aerial dexterity, and its unwavering recall from much greater distances in the open field, the lure. You are about to teach your feathered student the intricate, dynamic dance of the recall, mastering its response to that tempting, swinging promise of a reward. The lure vaparak or dalv in some Persian traditions, with equivalents in every falconry culture, is, in essence, a decoy, an artificial quarry designed to entice the bird back to the falconer. A key historical fact is that lures have been used in falconry for millennia. their designs varying but their fundamental purpose remaining constant. In its simplest form, it might be a pair of bird wings, perhaps from a pigeon or duck, tied together with a piece of leather and a long cord. More elaborate lures could be fashioned from leather into the rough shape of a bird or a small mammal, often adorned with real feathers to make them look more enticingly like prey. And, crucially, a small, fresh piece of meat, a reward or garnish, would be firmly attached to the lure before each training session. The lure is not just a visual target, it's a mobile feeding station, a promise of sustenance that your bird will learn to associate with returning to you. It's like the ultimate irresistible come home for dinner call, but for a creature that could easily decide to dine elsewhere, permanently, if not properly motivated. Oh, look, my dear kestrel, you might say, twirling the feathered lure enticingly. It's your favorite game. Chase the fleeing pseudobird and get a deliciously real snack. Far more exciting than just hopping to my boring old fist, wouldn't you agree? The transition from fist training to lure training is a gradual one. Initially, you might simply show the bird the baited lure while it's on your fist, allowing it to eat from it, reinforcing the idea that this new object is a source of food. Then, you might place the bird on a perch a short distance away, show it the lure, perhaps giving a specific call or whistle that will become its recall signal, and then toss the lure gently onto the ground nearby. When the bird flies to the lure and begins to eat, you approach calmly, allow it to take a few bites, and then gently pick it up, along with the lure, back onto your fist, perhaps offering another small tidbit from the glove as a final reward. This teaches the bird that coming to the lure and allowing you to approach is a positive, rewarding experience. As the bird becomes more confident, you begin to swing the lure on its cord, making it move like a fleeing bird or a scurrying animal. This ignites the raptor's innate predatory chase instinct. You'll start with short flights on accreance that long training line, casting the bird off your fist and then, after it has flown a little distance, swinging the lure to call it back. The sight of that familiar, food-bearing object, combined with your recall signal, should bring it swooping in. When it binds to the lure, seizes it with its talons, you allow it to make in or plume on the meat for a short while, a vital part of the reward process, before gently coaxing it back onto your fist. The real art of lure flying comes when the bird is ready for free flight. In a safe, open area, you will cast your falcon or hawk off, perhaps allowing it to circle and gain some height, or to fly to a nearby tree. Then, with your specific call or whistle, you will produce the lure and begin to swing it with practiced, enticing movements. This is where the dance truly begins. The bird, seeing the familiar lure and hearing your call, should turn and fly towards you. For a falcon, this might involve a spectacular, high-speed stoop onto the swinging lure, a breathtaking display of aerial prowess. For a hawk, it might be a swift, direct dash. Your job as the falconer is to manage the lure skillfully, making it an attractive and challenging but not impossible target, and then to allow the bird to successfully catch it and be rewarded. It's a dynamic, interactive exercise that builds not only the bird's recall but also its fitness, its agility, and its confidence. It's also, frankly, incredibly good fun to watch, even if you are the one getting a bit dizzy from all that lure swinging. Just a few more passes, my little whirlwind, you might pant, as your prize saker makes another exhilarating stoop at the lure. My arm is about to fall off, but your aerial acrobatics are simply divine, and the cardio is probably good for both of us. A quirky and rather important aspect of lure training is ensuring the bird doesn't become lure-bound. That is, so obsessed with the lure itself that it refuses to hunt actual live quarry, or becomes aggressive and difficult to take off the lure once it has caught it. The lure is a means to an end, a tool for control and exercise, not a replacement for the real thing. Medieval falconry treatises often contained detailed advice on how to prevent this, such as always ensuring the bird is slightly hungry before lure flying, making the reward on the lure relatively small but satisfying, and quickly transitioning to live quarry training once the recall to the lure is reliable. The lure is also an indispensable tool for recovering your bird in the field if it has flown out of sight, if it has missed its quarry and is circling uncertainly, or if it is simply being a bit independent-minded and reluctant to return to the fist immediately. The sight of that familiar swinging lure and the sound of your recall signal can often be the one thing that brings a wayward bird back from a potentially disastrous flyaway. The exact evolution of different lure designs across various falconry traditions, for instance, the addition of actual bird wings to make them more realistic, or the development of specific swinging techniques to mimic the flight of different types of prey, is a subject of ongoing historical research and practical experimentation by modern falconers. Uh, what is clear is that medieval Persian falconers, like their counterparts across the globe, had developed this aspect of training into a highly refined art form. Mastering the dance of the lure was therefore essential for both the bird and the falconer. For the bird, it was a source of exercise, a satisfying simulation of the chase, and a reliable signal to return for food and safety. For the falconer, it was a vital tool for control, for conditioning, and for maintaining that crucial bond of trust and responsiveness with their aerial partner. Without a reliable recall to the lure, venturing out into the open field with a free-flying raptor would be a very risky proposition indeed. The lure was the invisible string that kept the wild heart of the hunter tethered, however lightly, to the falconer's patient hand. Your medieval raptor, be it a noble falcon or an agile hawk, is now a master of the lure, returning to your swinging decoy with impressive speed and precision. It's fit, keen, and responds eagerly to your calls and signals. The bond of trust, built through countless hours of patient manning, waking, and fist training, is strong. But so far, all its hunting has been directed at an artificial target, a feathered bundle of leather promising a prearranged meaty reward. Now comes a pivotal, and often very exciting for you, and probably rather terrifying for the quarry, moment in its education, entering the quarry. This is the delicate and crucial process of introducing your trained bird to actual live prey for the first time, awakening and channeling its innate predatory instincts towards the specific game you intend to hunt together. This is where all that painstaking groundwork in the muse and the training field translates into real-world application. The moment your feathered student truly begins to earn its prestigious title as a hunter, the primary goal of entering a bird is to ensure that its first few encounters with live quarry are successful and highly rewarding. This builds the bird's confidence, reinforces its natural hunting drive, and teaches it to associate a particular type of prey with a satisfying meal obtained in partnership with you. The falconer, a disastrous first attempt, where the quarry escapes easily or worse, where the young or inexperienced bird is frightened or even injured by a defensive prey animal, could set back its training considerably, making it hesitant or sticky, reluctant to leave the fist in the future. So, medieval falconers approach this stage with great care, meticulous planning, and a deep understanding of both their bird's temperament and the behavior of the intended quarry. It's a bit like a young actor's first big role. You want to make sure their debut performance is a hit, full of positive reinforcement, so they don't suddenly develop stage fright and decide a quiet life as a turnip farmer is more their speed. All right, my little thunder talon, you might murmur to your young falcon as you prepare for its first real hunt. That pigeon over there is your co-star in this little drama. Your motivation is hunger. Your action is, well, you know what to do. And try to make it look spectacular for the imaginary critics. No pressure. For a young ayas, a bird raised from the nest, which has never hunted for itself in the wild. The process of entering would begin with relatively easy targets. A key historical fact, often described in medieval falconry treatises, is the use of bagged or tethered quarry for these initial lessons. For example, a young peregrine falcon might first be entered on a domestic pigeon, perhaps one with its flight feathers slightly clipped to make it an easier catch. Released in a controlled environment, the falconer would unhood the falcon, allow it to see the pigeon, and then cast it off. The falcon, its instincts hopefully kicking in, would pursue and catch the pigeon. The falconer would then immediately go to the bird, allow it to begin to eat its kill while still on the ground or on the falconer's fist, offering lavish praise and perhaps a few choice extra tidbits. This immediate positive reinforcement on the kill is absolutely vital. It teaches the bird that this new activity, chasing and catching live prey, is highly rewarding and something to be repeated. Gradually, as the bird gains confidence and skill, the challenges would be increased. It might be flown at stronger, wilder pigeons. Then perhaps at less challenging wild game birds like partridges or quail, often in the company of an older, experienced make hawk or make falcon from which it could learn by example. Watching an experienced bird successfully hunt could significantly speed up the learning process for a young raptor. For a wild-caught haggard, which already knows how to hunt but needs to be retrained to hunt in partnership with a human, and for specific quarry, the process of entering might be slightly different. The falconer would need to assess what kind of prey the haggard had been accustomed to hunting in the wild, and then gradually shift its focus, if necessary, to the desired game. This might involve initially flying it at quarry similar to its natural prey, and then slowly introducing it to new types of game, always ensuring those early encounters were successful and rewarding. The choice of quarry, of course, depended heavily on the type of raptor being trained. Long-winged falcons like peregrines or suckers, with their spectacular high-speed stoops, were primarily entered on fast-flying game birds found in open country. Ducks, partridges, grouse, cranes, bustards, short-winged hawks like goshawks or sparrowhawks, with their agility in confined spaces, would be entered on quarry typically found in woodlands or scrub. Pheasants, rabbits, hares, and smaller birds. A quirky, though entirely practical, consideration was ensuring the quarry was appropriate for the bird's size and strength. You wouldn't enter a small merlin on a large, aggressive hare. That would be like sending a chihuahua to wrestle a badger. The outcome would likely be unfortunate for the merlin, and rather embarrassing for the falconer. The falconer's role during these first hunts was far more than just being a spectator. They had to manage the situation carefully, perhaps using dogs to flush the game from cover at the right moment, positioning the bird for a favorable flight, and being ready to assist if the bird got into difficulty or if the quarry was particularly strong or defensive. They also had to control the bird's feeding on the kill, allowing it to take a good crop to feel rewarded, but not so much that it would be too full and unresponsive for future flights that day or the next. This delicate balance of reward and hunger was a constant throughout a bird's hunting career. The ethical considerations surrounding the use of live bait or bagged quarry in historical falconry training are, understandably, viewed very differently by modern animal welfare standards than they were in the medieval period, when such practices were considered standard and necessary parts of the training process. For the medieval falconer, the primary goal was to produce an effective hunting bird, and these methods were seen as the most efficient way to achieve that. As the bird successfully takes its first few wild quarry, its confidence soars, its natural predatory instincts are fully awakened and channeled, and its bond with the falconer, now a proven partner in the thrill of the chase, deepens. It begins to understand the intricate dance of the hunt, the calls and signals of its human companion, the satisfaction of a well-earned meal. The transition from a trained lure flyer to a true hunting partner is complete. The wild hunter has been entered, its formidable skills now honed and directed, ready to grace the medieval skies in pursuit of game, a living testament to the falconer's art and the enduring power of its own wild spirit. Your medieval raptor, having successfully been entered on its first live quarry, is now beginning to understand the exhilarating partnership of the hunt. Its innate predatory instincts are fully awakened, channeled by your patient training towards specific game. But if your chosen feathered companion is one of the long-winged falcons, a swift peregrine, a powerful sucker, or perhaps even a majestic gerfalcon from the far north, then you are now ready to embark on training it for one of the most spectacular and highly prized forms of aerial hunting, the art of waiting on high above, followed by that breathtaking, lightning-fast dive known as the stoop. This isn't just about catching dinner. This is about orchestrating a deadly ballet in the sky, a display of speed, precision, and perfect coordination between falconer, falcon, and often hunting dogs. You are about to teach your bird to become a patient, soaring sentinel, ready to plummet like a feathered thunderbolt from the heavens. Imagine yourself out on the open plains or rolling moorlands of medieval England, France, or perhaps the vast landscapes of Persia where this style of hunting was also highly refined. This kind of terrain is ideal for high mounters, falcons that hunt by spotting quarry from a great altitude and then diving upon it with incredible velocity. The first step is to teach your falcon to wait on, that is, to circle patiently high above you. The falconer, sometimes becoming a mere speck against the blue, while you and your dogs work below to flush game like partridges, grouse, or ducks from cover. How is this achieved? It's a gradual process, building upon the reliable recall to the lure that you've already established. A key historical fact, detailed in medieval falconry treatises such as Emperor Frederick II of Hohenstaufen's magnificent 13th century work, De Arte Venandi cum Avibus, The Art of Hunting with Birds, is the use of the lure to encourage the falcon to fly higher and to remain above the falconer. You might start by casting your falcon off your fist and, as it flies, occasionally showing it the lure from below, but not immediately throwing it. This encourages the bird to stay in the vicinity, anticipating a reward. Yes, my little sky soarer. You might call upwards. I see you up there, looking like a very determined, slightly judgmental dot. Just a little higher now. And try not to get distracted by that particularly fluffy cloud that looks a bit like a giant quail. Focus. To encourage greater altitude, the falconers might use techniques like kite training, though more documented in later periods. The principle of getting the lure high could have had medieval precursors, or by having an assistant on horseback gallop away with the lure, encouraging the falcon to follow and gain height. Another method involved repeatedly throwing the lure high into the air, or using a very long lure line, rewarding the falcon only when it had achieved a good pitch above you. It required immense patience and a deep understanding of the bird's motivation. It needed to learn that staying high and attentive above the falconer was the behavior that would eventually lead to the thrill of the chase and the reward of food. Once your falcon is reliably waiting on at a suitable height, and the exact altitudes achieved by falcons waiting on in medieval hunts, and how these were judged by falconers on the ground without modern instruments, are subjects of ongoing fascination and some speculation. Though experienced eyes could certainly judge it well. The next phase begins. This often involved a coordinated effort with well-trained hunting dogs, such as pointers or setters. The dogs would work the ground below, locating and pointing at hidden game birds. The falcon, circling high above, would see the dogs on point and understand that quarry was about to be flushed. This created a state of intense anticipation in the bird. It's like a perfectly choreographed team play. The dogs find the game. The falcon positions itself for the attack. And you, the falconer, are the conductor of this entire predatory orchestra. Then, at your signal, or when the dogs flush the game, the moment of truth arrives, the stoop. The falcon, spotting its quarry breaking cover below, will turn, fold its wings, and plummet towards the earth in a breathtaking near-vertical dive of incredible speed. As we've noted, a peregrine falcon in a stoop can be one of the fastest animals on the planet. The sound of the wind rushing through its feathers as it dives has been described as a roar or a hiss. The precision required is extraordinary. The falcon must calculate its trajectory, adjust for wind, and intercept a fast-moving, often erratically flying game bird, striking it with its talons, usually the hind talon, or hallux, with enough force to kill or incapacitate it in mid-air. It's a display of natural weaponry and aerial mastery refined by your careful training. If you blink, you might miss the crucial moment of impact. It's definitely not a hobby for those who prefer their action in slow motion, unless you had some kind of medieval super slow motion replay dream. Did you see that Geoffrey Magnificent struck that partridge like a bolt from Thor himself? My bird, of course. Your bird seems to be more interested in trying to make friends with that rather large bumblebee again. A quirky, though perhaps essential, element of training for this stoop might involve using a drag lure, a lure pulled swiftly along the ground or through the air to simulate a fleeing bird, or even live, but perhaps slightly handicapped. Quarry in the later stages of training to ensure the falcon understood how to strike effectively and was not lure shy when it came to real game. The falconer's role during this dramatic sequence is one of intense focus. You must manage your dogs, signal the flush at the right moment, observe your falcon's flight, and be ready to ride quickly to where it makes its kill or where the quarry falls. Once the falcon has successfully taken its prey, you approach calmly, allow it to plume and feed on its reward, often the head of the bird it has caught, a prized tidbit, and then gently take it back onto your fist. This immediate reward on the kill is vital for reinforcing its hunting behavior. The art of training a falcon to wait on and stoop effectively was considered one of the highest forms of medieval falconry, requiring immense skill, patience, and a perfectly conditioned bird. It was particularly favored for hunting in open country where the falcon had space to achieve its commanding height and perform its spectacular dives. The thrill of witnessing this deadly ballet, this perfect coordination between falconer, dogs, and a supremely skilled aerial predator, was one of the ultimate rewards for the medieval devotee of Bazdar. It was a fleeting moment of wildness, perfectly harnessed and directed by human art and understanding. You've witnessed the breathtaking aerial ballet of the long-winged falcon, that noble high mounter patiently waiting on high above the open plains before plummeting in a devastating stoop upon its unsuspecting quarry. It's a spectacular display of speed, power, and refined training, the very epitome of classic medieval falconry for many. But the art of hunting with trained raptors was far from a one-trick pony, or rather, a one-trick falcon. As you now turn your attention from the vast, open skies to the more confined, intricate landscapes of woodlands, hedgerows, and riverbanks, you encounter a different kind of feathered hunter, and a different, equally sophisticated style of training the world of the short-winged hawks, particularly the formidable goshawk and the nimble sparrowhawk. These were the masters of agility and ambush. Their training focused on swift, direct pursuits and lightning-fast attacks in denser terrain, where a high-flying falcon would be at a distinct disadvantage. Imagine yourself now, no longer scanning the distant horizon for a speck in the blue, but instead moving quietly through a medieval forest, perhaps in the dappled green light of an English oakwood or the tangled undergrowth of a French bocage. Your companion is not a falcon patiently circling overhead, but a powerful goshawk aster gentilis, or basha in Persian traditions, which also highly valued them, perched alertly on your gloved fist. Its shorter, broader wings and long, rudder-like tail, perfectly adapted for explosive bursts of speed and incredible maneuverability through trees and obstacles. Or perhaps it's a smaller, equally agile sparrowhawk, ideal for hunting smaller birds in similar environments. The training philosophy for these hawks of the fist, as they were often called, differed significantly from that of the falcons. Their strength lay not in soaring altitude and gravity-assisted dives, but in lightning-fast acceleration, surprise attacks, and relentless, close-quarters pursuit. It's the difference between an elegant, long-range sniper and a highly skilled special ops agent who excels in close-quarters combat. Both deadly, but with very different approaches. Right, my fierce little forest ghost. You might murmur to your goshawk, feeling its powerful grip on your glove. That rather plump pheasant currently attempting to look invisible in yonder bramble patch. He hasn't a clue what's about to hit him. Try to make it quick, and for goodness sake, don't get your jesses tangled in that thorny bush again. A key historical fact is that goshawks, in particular, were highly prized in medieval Europe and the Middle East for their versatility and their effectiveness in hunting a wide range of quarry in wooded or mixed terrain. They could take pheasants, partridges, ducks often ambushed near water, rabbits, hares, and even squirrels. Their training focused on developing an incredibly swift and direct flight from the falconer's fist, or sometimes from a nearby perch or bough stand where the bird might be placed straight towards the flushed quarry. There was no patient waiting on the moment game was spotted or flushed by beaters or dogs. The hawk was unhooded if it was being carried hooded, though hawks were often carried unhooded once fully manned and cast off in a sudden, explosive burst of speed. The training for this from-the-fist hunting involved meticulous repetition and a deep understanding of the hawk's reactive nature. The falconer would work closely with beaters, or very commonly, with specially trained hunting dogs like spaniels or other flushing breeds to locate and flush game from thick cover. The hawk had to learn to remain calm and focused on the fist, even amidst the excitement of the approaching dogs or the shouts of the beaters, and then to launch itself with instant, unwavering commitment the moment the quarry broke cover and the falconer gave the signal. This required perfect timing and coordination between the falconer, the dogs, and the hawk. It was a team effort where each member had to play their part flawlessly. See that rustle in the ferns? Accipiter, a good generic name for your hawk, playing on its scientific family. The dogs are onto something. Ready yourself. And please, this time, try to go for the pheasant. Not the Duke's prize-winning, very expensive, and surprisingly fast hat that just blew off his head. A quirky, though rather important, aspect of training and hunting with hawks like goshawks was managing their sometimes fiery temperament. Goshawks, in particular, were known for being quite sticky with their kills, meaning they could be very possessive of their prey and reluctant to give it up to the falconer. Training them to allow the falconer to approach and make into the kill, take the quarry while still rewarding the hawk with a portion, required considerable skill, patience, and a firm but gentle hand. An improperly handled goshawk could easily develop bad habits like carrying its prey off to eat in secret, or even becoming aggressive towards the falconer at the kill site. The actual pursuit by a goshawk or sparrowhawk through woodland or dense cover was a breathtaking display of aerial agility. These birds could weave through trees, duck under branches, and twist and turn with incredible speed and precision, relentlessly pursuing their quarry. Unlike the falcon's often clean mid-air strike, a hawk might follow its prey into a thicket, sometimes even pursuing it on foot for a short distance if it went to ground. The falconer had to be equally agile, ready to follow on foot or horseback, crashing through undergrowth to reach their bird and its prize. The relative status of hawking with short-winged hawks versus falconing with long-winged falcons in different medieval social strata is an interesting point of discussion, as hawks were sometimes considered more versatile for certain types of terrain or quarry that might be more accessible to a wider range of hunters, not just the highest nobility with access to vast open plains. While the high-flying falcon might have been seen as more aristocratic in some contexts, a well-trained goshawk was an incredibly effective and highly valued hunting partner, a true master of its woodland domain. The daily training for these hawks would involve repeated flights from the fist to a lure or to bagged quarry in increasingly complex environments, teaching them to navigate obstacles and to maintain their focus. Fitness was crucial, as their hunting style often involved short, incredibly intense bursts of speed rather than prolonged soaring. So, as you imagine yourself crashing through a medieval forest, your heart pounding, trying to keep up with your goshawk as it relentlessly pursues a fleeing rabbit through the brambles, you experience a different kind of thrill from the open sky drama of the falcon's stoop. This is a more intimate, more reactive, and often more chaotic form of hunting, a true partnership where your ability to work in concert with your bird, your dogs, and the very landscape itself is tested to its limits. The woodland hawks were the feathered ninjas of medieval falconry, masters of the surprise attack and the agile pursuit. Their wild spirit perfectly adapted to the intricate dance of life and death in the dappled light of the ancient forests. You've witnessed the patient art of manning a wild raptor, the dynamic dance of training to the lure, and the specialized techniques for honing the hunting prowess of both the high-flying falcons and the agile woodland hawks, your medieval bird of prey, whether a noble peregrine or a fierce goshawk, is now a responsive, skilled hunter, a testament to your dedication and understanding. But all this training, all this potential, would be for naught without another equally crucial and relentlessly ongoing aspect of the falconer's daily craft, the meticulous, almost scientific management of the bird's diet and physical condition. This wasn't just about tossing your feathered friend a piece of meat now and then. It was about achieving and maintaining that perfect flying weight or hunting weight. That delicate A&D critical balance where the bird is lean, keen, and supremely motivated to hunt, yet still healthy, strong, and full of vigor. This flying weight secret was one of the most fundamental and often most challenging aspects of the medieval falconer's art. Imagine yourself as that dedicated falconer, beginning your day not with a hearty breakfast for yourself, but with a careful assessment of your birds. Before any thought of training or hunting, you would observe each raptor on its perch. How does it look? Are its feathers sleek and well-ordered? Or are they puffed up, indicating chill or illness? Are its eyes bright and alert, or dull and listless? How did it regurgitate its pellet of indigestible fur, feathers, and bones from its last meal? Was the casting clean and well-formed, a sign of good digestion? These subtle observations were the falconer's daily diagnostic tools, indicators of the bird's health and readiness. A key historical fact, emphasized in virtually all medieval falconry treatises, is that a raptor's motivation to hunt is inextricably linked to its state of hunger. A bird that is too high, overfed, and fat will be lazy, unresponsive, and show little interest in pursuing quarry or returning to the falconer. It's like trying to motivate a very well-fed, very comfortable cat to chase a string. It might give you a disdainful blink and go back to its nap. Oh, you want me to expend precious energy chasing that rather scruffy-looking partridge? Human. But I just had a lovely 3-course meal of prime pigeon. Perhaps tomorrow, or the day after, I'll pencil you in. Conversely, a bird that is too low, underfed, and weak will lack the strength, stamina, and focus needed for a successful hunt. It might be keen, yes, but it won't have the power to pursue and subdue challenging quarry, and its health could be compromised. The falconer's daily challenge, therefore, was to keep each bird at its precise individual flying weight, that optimal point of lean, muscular fitness and healthy hunger that maximized its hunting drive and its responsiveness to training. This wasn't a fixed number on a scale, though some rudimentary balances might have existed. Most medieval falconers likely relied on feel and observation. It was a dynamic condition, subtly different for each bird and even varying for the same bird depending on the weather, its recent activity level, and the type of hunting anticipated. It was an art born of experience, intuition, and incredibly close observation. The primary tool for managing this condition was, of course, diet. Medieval falconers fed their birds fresh, raw meat. The type of meat was important. Good quality, lean muscle meat from animals like pigeons, quail, chickens, rabbits, or even lean beef or venison was preferred. Fatty meats were generally avoided as they could make the bird sluggish. The amount of food given each day was meticulously controlled, often measured in tiny portions. A bird might be fed once or twice a day, depending on its needs and the training schedule. After a successful hunt, the bird would be rewarded by being allowed to make into its kill, consuming a good portion, often the head and some of the breast meat of a game bird, for example, which served as both a powerful reinforcement and its daily meal. On days when there was no hunting, or if the bird needed to be made particularly keen for an upcoming event, its rations would be carefully adjusted downwards. The concept of casting, the regurgitation of a pellet containing indigestible parts of its prey, was also vital for a bird's health. Feeding meat with some fur or feathers still attached known as wrangle in some contexts Though wrangle more specifically refers to small stones given to help scour the crop was essential to ensure proper casting, which helped to keep the bird's digestive system clean and healthy. A bird that was not casting well was often a sign of an underlying health issue or improper diet. A quirky and perhaps slightly macabre tidbit from some medieval falconry texts is the detailed advice given on how to prepare specific types of meat to either increase or decrease a bird's keenness, or even to supposedly influence its temperament. Certain parts of an animal might be considered more heating or cooling, in a humoral sense, yes. Even birds were sometimes considered through a galenic lens, or believed to impart specific qualities like courage or speed. For example, feeding a bird the heart of a particularly brave animal might be thought to enhance its own valor. The precise nutritional understanding of medieval falconers, beyond their very astute empirical observation of cause and effect on their bird's physical condition and hunting drive, is difficult to ascertain from the texts alone, but their success speaks to a highly effective practical system. The falconer would also need to be a keen observer of their bird's behavior as an indicator of its weight and condition. A bird that was sharp-set or keen would be alert, responsive, perhaps even slightly restless on the perch, its eyes bright, its movements quick. A bird that was too high might be lethargic, preening excessively, or showing little interest in the lure or the falconer's calls. Learning to read these subtle signs was a fundamental skill. This daily management of diet and condition was not just about preparing for the hunt, it was also about maintaining the bird's long-term health and well-being. A well-conditioned bird was less susceptible to disease, had better feather quality essential for flight, and would likely have a longer and more successful hunting career. The mews, as we've explored, needed to be clean and airy, and the birds needed opportunities for bathing and weathering, spending time in fresh air and sunshine to maintain their condition. So, as you imagine that medieval falconer, perhaps in the cool light of early morning, carefully preparing a precise portion of meat for each of their prized birds, you are witnessing a daily act of profound dedication and skill. It was a constant balancing act, a continuous assessment, a deep, almost intuitive understanding of the delicate interplay between food, fitness, and that fierce wild spirit they sought to partner with. The flying weight secret wasn't a secret formula written in a book. It was a living art, practiced daily, the silent, essential foundation of all success in the noble pursuit of falconry. You've meticulously managed your medieval raptor's diet, fine-tuning its flying weight with the precision of an artist, ensuring it's keen, fit, and ready for the hunt. But the daily life of a dedicated falconer and the well-being of their prized bird extends far beyond just carefully measured portions of quail or pigeon. The very environment in which the bird lives, its housing, its hygiene, the daily care of its magnificent plumage, all play a crucial role in maintaining its health, its spirit, and its ability to perform as a supreme aerial athlete. You are now stepping into the heart of the falconer's domestic domain, the mews, that specialized sanctuary where these feathered hunters were sheltered, tended, and kept in peak physical condition, ready for the sky's wild call. This wasn't just a birdhouse, it was a high-performance avian athlete's carefully managed living quarters. The mews, a term originally referring to a place where hawks were kept during their mew, or molting period, but later encompassing their general housing would vary in grandeur depending on the status of the falconer. A king or a great nobleman might have extensive purpose-built stone or timber structures, while a more modest country squire or a professional falconer might have a smaller, more utilitarian setup. But certain principles remained constant. A key historical fact is that medieval falconry treatises, like Emperor Frederick II's De Arte Venandi cum Avibus, often provided detailed advice on the ideal construction and location of the mews. They should be dry, airy but not drafty, well lit but also offering shade, and secure from predators like cats, weasels, or even thieving humans. A well-trained falcon was an incredibly valuable commodity. Remember, ideally, the mews would face away from the harshest winds and have a southern or eastern exposure to catch the morning sun. It's like designing the perfect spa retreat, but for creatures that can tear your face off if they're not feeling entirely relaxed and appreciated. Right, architect, a demanding duke might instruct, I want the royal muse to have excellent cross ventilation, south-facing windows for optimal vitamin D absorption for my gerfalcons, and absolutely no chance of that pesky kitchen cat. Whiskers the Terrible finding its way in. The last time he tried to make friends with my prize peregrine, it involved a lot of feathers and some very unducal language from myself. Inside the muse, cleanliness was paramount. The floor, often covered with clean sand, fine gravel, or fresh straw, would be swept and changed regularly to prevent the buildup of droppings, mutes, and reduce the risk of disease. Each bird would have its own designated perch, carefully designed for its comfort and health. We've mentioned screen perches, bow perches, and block perches before. These weren't just random sticks. The diameter and texture of the perch were important for good foot health, helping to prevent conditions like bumblefoot, a nasty inflammation of the foot pads. The perches also needed to be arranged so that birds couldn't easily bait into walls or fight with their neighbors, and so their long tail and flight feathers wouldn't become frayed or damaged. Fresh water for drinking and bathing was essential. Most raptors enjoy bathing to keep their feathers in good condition, so shallow water pans would be provided, especially during warmer weather or during the molt, the annual shedding and regrowth of feathers, a critical period for a bird's health and future flying ability. And then there's the care of those all-important feathers. A falcon or hawk's ability to fly, to hunt, to survive, depends entirely on the perfect condition of its plumage. Broken, bent, or soiled feathers could severely impair its performance. The bird itself would spend a great deal of time meticulously preening, using its beak to arrange and waterproof each feather with oil from a gland near its tail. The falconer's role was to ensure the bird had the conditions cleanliness, good diet, access to bathing to maintain its feathers, and also to intervene if damage occurred. We touched on the art of imping before, the remarkable technique of repairing a broken flight or tail feather by carefully splicing in a section from a molted feather using a tiny needle and adhesive. This required incredible skill and precision, as a poorly imped feather could unbalance the bird in flight. It's like being a high-end, bespoke tailor, but for individual avian flight components, one where a single bad stitch could have very aerodynamic consequences. Oh dear. You might sigh, examining a prized falcon that's had an unfortunate encounter with a thorny bush. That's a primary flight feather snapped clean in two. Looks like it's time for the tiny needle, the fish glue, and about 3 hours of me holding my breath and trying not to sneeze. The things I do for perfectly balanced plumage. A quirky, and perhaps rather charming, aspect of feather care might involve specific traditional recipes for feather conditioners or treatments to enhance their sheen or resilience, perhaps using certain herbal infusions or oils, though concrete evidence for this in medieval texts might be more folkloric than widespread practice. The falconer was also a constant, vigilant observer of their bird's overall health. They would learn to recognize the subtle signs of illness changes in appetite or behavior, listlessness, unusual mutes, ruffled feathers, or problems with breathing. Medieval falconry treatises contained extensive sections on diagnosing and treating common avian ailments. While the level of sophistication in medieval avian veterinary care, particularly in distinguishing between different types of ailments and the efficacy of their remedies, is a subject that modern scholars and veterinary historians continue to explore through textual analysis. It's clear that experienced falconers possessed a considerable body of empirical knowledge. They might use herbal remedies, dietary adjustments, or simple surgical procedures like lancing an abscess to treat their birds. The bond was such that the falconer often felt a deep responsibility for the physical well-being of their feathered charge. This daily routine of muse management, hygiene, feather care, and health monitoring was a fundamental, if less glamorous, part of the medieval falconer's life. It required diligence, attention to detail, and a deep commitment to the welfare of these highly specialized avian athletes. The thrilling spectacle of the hunt in the open sky was built upon these quiet, consistent daily acts of care and husbandry within the shelter of the mews. For without a healthy, well-conditioned bird, there could be no gentle art to practice. The Muse was not just a house, it was a haven, a hospital, and a high-performance training center, all rolled into one. You've dedicated countless hours, days, even months to the meticulous care and training of your medieval raptor. You've patiently manned it, diligently flown it to the lure, carefully entered it on quarry, and meticulously managed its diet and health within the well-ordered mews. A profound bond, a unique interspecies partnership, has been forged through this shared journey of discipline and trust. Your bird is not just a hunting tool, it's a companion, a source of immense pride, and perhaps even a creature you've come to deeply, if unsentimentally, care for. But the world of medieval falconry, for all its artistry and noble tradition, is also fraught with peril. The daily life of a falconer is not just one of thrilling hunts and perfectly trained birds, it's also one of constant vigilance against the ever-present risks of loss, injury, and the heartbreaking silence that follows when a prized bird, your silent sky partner, fails to return to your fist. One of the most acute anxieties for any falconer, medieval or modern, is the risk of losing a bird. Imagine yourself out in the field, perhaps on a vast open plain or in a dense woodland. You cast off your magnificent falcon or your agile hawk at a promising flight of game. You watch, your heart soaring with your bird, as it pursues its quarry. But then, something goes wrong. The quarry might fly too far, drawing your bird out of sight. A sudden gust of wind might carry it astray. It might become distracted by other prey, or perhaps in a moment of resurgent wildness. It simply decides that the call of the open sky is stronger than the call of your lure or your familiar whistle. A key historical fact, often lamented in falconry treatises, is that even the best trained birds could sometimes be lost in this way. Lost to the bells, as the saying went, referring to the tiny bells attached to their legs that would, hopefully, I'd help you locate them if they landed nearby. But if a bird flew too far, too fast, or landed in dense, inaccessible terrain, those faint tinkles could easily be swallowed by the wind or the vastness of the landscape. It's a falconer's nightmare, your prized companion, the result of years of patient training, simply vanishing into the blue. By all the saints and sky gods, you might cry, your voice hoarse from calling, your eyes straining at the empty horizon. Where did my beloved Altan Golden One disappear to? He was just chasing that rather overconfident pheasant, and now just sky, and a very expensive silence where my prize-winning falcon used to be. The search for a lost bird would be a desperate, often agonizing affair. The falconer, perhaps with assistants, would scour the countryside for days, calling, whistling, swinging the lure, hoping for a glimpse, a sound, any sign of their missing raptor. Sometimes, with luck, the bird might be found, perhaps perched in a tree, tired and hungry, but safe. Other times, it would be gone for good, reclaimed by the wild, or fallen victim to predators or starvation. The emotional impact of such a loss on a dedicated falconer could be profound, a grief akin to losing a close companion, compounded by the immense investment of time, effort, and often considerable financial value that the bird represented. Injury to the bird during the hunt was another constant peril. The quarry itself could be dangerous. A large game bird like a heron or a crane, with its powerful beak and long legs, could inflict serious wounds on an attacking falcon. A hare or a rabbit, with its strong hind legs, could deliver a disabling kick. Even smaller birds, in their desperate attempts to escape, could cause a raptor to crash into trees, rocks, or other obstacles, resulting in broken bones or damaged feathers. The falconer had to be an expert field veterinarian, ready to provide immediate first aid, cleaning wounds, splinting broken limbs, or carefully imping damaged flight feathers to give their injured bird the best chance of recovery. Remember, these weren't just pets, they were highly trained athletes, and an injury could end their hunting career or even their life. Disease, as we've touched upon in the context of muse care, was also an ever-present threat. Despite the falconer's best efforts at hygiene and proper diet, birds could still fall ill. Avian ailments, often poorly understood in medieval times, could strike suddenly and fatally. The loss of a bird to disease, after so much effort had been invested in its training and care, would be another source of heartbreak and frustration. And then there was the risk of the bird being preyed upon itself. While a trained falcon or hawk was a formidable hunter, it was not at the absolute top of the aerial food chain. Larger wild raptors, like eagles, could sometimes attack and kill a falconer's bird, especially if it was young or inexperienced. On the ground, a bird that had made a kill might be vulnerable to attack from foxes, wildcats, or other terrestrial predators if the falconer was not quick to reach it. A quirky, though perhaps not entirely fringe, aspect of dealing with these perils might involve certain superstitions or rituals. A falconer might carry a particular amulet believed to protect their bird from harm, or recite specific charms before a hunt to ensure its safe return. Some medieval texts even describe elaborate, almost magical, procedures for trying to lure back a lost hawk, involving special calls, lures baited with specific and sometimes rather strange ingredients, or appeals to patron saints of hunting. The efficacy of many traditional avian remedies and rituals for protecting or recovering hunting birds, as described in medieval falconry treatises, is, of course, difficult to assess from a purely scientific modern perspective, though they undoubtedly provided psychological comfort and a sense of agency to falconers facing these constant risks. The financial loss of a prized bird could also be considerable. A well-trained, high-status falcon, like a gyr falcon or a prime peregrine, could be worth more than a knight's warhorse, representing a significant investment for its owner. Losing such a bird was not just an emotional blow, it was a serious economic setback. So, as you imagine that medieval falconer, their heart in their mouth as their bird soars out of sight, or their hands gently tending to an injured wing, you begin to understand that this gentle art was also one of constant anxiety, of potential heartbreak, and of profound responsibility. The perils were many, the emotional stakes incredibly high. Each successful flight, each safe return to the fist, was a small victory, a moment of relief in a world where loss was an ever-present shadow. The bond forged between falconer and bird was all the more precious because it was so often threatened, so easily broken by the harsh realities of the wild, or the simple, tragic vagaries of fate. You felt the falconer's anxiety as their prized bird soars perilously out of sight. The sting of loss when a feathered companion is injured or fails to return, and the deep dedication required to navigate these constant risks inherent in the gentle art. This surprisingly complicated world of medieval falconry training, with its intricate techniques, its profound understanding of avian behavior, and its delicate balance of patience and authority, was not just a haphazard collection of individual trial and error. It was a sophisticated body of knowledge, a master's wisdom, painstakingly accumulated over centuries, carefully preserved, and diligently passed down from one generation of practitioners to the next, through both revered written treatises and equally vital oral traditions. You are now stepping into the medieval equivalent of a specialized graduate school, where the curriculum is entirely focused on the art and science of partnering with these magnificent aerial hunters. Imagine a young apprentice when having perhaps already spent years in the mews learning the basics of bird care and initial manning, now sitting at the feet of a seasoned master falconer. This master, perhaps a grizzled veteran with decades of experience, his face weathered by sun and wind, his hands gnarled but incredibly gentle with his birds, would be a living repository of invaluable lore. He wouldn't just teach by rote. He would share stories of past hunts, of particularly challenging birds he had trained, of subtle observations about weather patterns or the behavior of quarry that could mean the difference between success and failure. He would demonstrate techniques, correct mistakes, and, perhaps most importantly, try to instill in his apprentice that almost intuitive feel for the birds that deep empathy and understanding that separated a true master from a mere technician. This oral tradition, this direct personal transmission of knowledge from master to student, was absolutely fundamental to medieval falconry. It's like learning a complex craft like violin making or haute cuisine. You can read all the books you want, but there's no substitute for years of hands-on guidance from someone who truly embodies the art. No, no. Young Ethelred. The master might patiently explain, adjusting the apprentice's grip on a newly hooded ikaz. Your touch must be as light as a summer breeze, yet as firm as the ancient oak. The bird must feel your confidence, not your fear. And for pity's sake, stop looking like it's about to peck your nose off. It might, but try not to advertise your terror so openly. But alongside this vital oral tradition, the medieval period also saw the rise of a rich written literature on falconry. As literacy became more widespread, at least among the noble and clerical classes who were the primary patrons and practitioners of high falconry, this accumulated wisdom began to be codified in detailed treatises and manuals. A key historical fact is the existence of several profoundly influential medieval texts on falconry. Perhaps the most famous in Europe is De Arte Venandi cum Avibus, The Art of Hunting with Birds, written in the 13th century by Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II of Hohenstaufen. This was not just a simple hunting guide, it was a remarkably detailed and scientifically observant work. Based on Frederick's own extensive experience and correspondence with falconers across his vast empire, including those in the Middle East. It covered avian anatomy, the different species of raptors, their diseases, their training, and their behavior, all with a level of empirical detail that was extraordinary for its time. It's like a medieval Audubon guide, zoology textbook, and advanced falconry training manual all rolled into one. Written by an emperor who clearly preferred ornithology to, say, boring old tax audits. In the Islamic world, particularly in Persia and Arabia, there was an even longer and equally sophisticated tradition of writing basnames, or books of the falcon, hawk. These treatises, some dating back to the early centuries of Islam and drawing on even older Sasanian Persian traditions, were often incredibly comprehensive, covering every conceivable aspect of the art. They would detail the best methods for trapping different types of birds, the most effective ways to man and train them, elaborate recipes for avian medicines, advice on diet and muse management, and even discussions on the ethics of the hunt and the ideal qualities of a falconer. Some of these manuscripts were beautifully calligraphed and exquisitely illustrated with miniature paintings. Treasured as works of art as well as practical guides, these written texts served several crucial purposes. They helped to preserve and standardize knowledge, ensuring that valuable techniques and observations were not lost over time or distorted through purely oral transmission. They allowed for the wider dissemination of falconry lore, enabling practitioners in different regions to learn from each other's experiences and innovations. And they elevated the status of falconry itself, presenting it not just as a sport, but as a learned art, a scientia worthy of serious study and royal patronage. A quirky and rather charming feature of some of these medieval falconry treatises is the inclusion of almost poetic or philosophical passages, reflecting on the beauty of the birds, the thrill of the hunt, or the deep spiritual bond that could form between the falconer and their feathered companion. They weren't always dry, technical manuals. They often conveyed a genuine passion and reverence for the art. You might find a passage describing the perfect stoop of a falcon in terms that are almost lyrical, or advice on how to understand the moods of your bird that sounds more like relationship counseling than animal training. To truly know your hawk. One such passage might advise, you must listen not just to its cries, but to the silent language of its feathers, the subtle shift of its weight upon your fist, the very beat of its wild heart against your own. For in that understanding lies the true mastery of this noble art, and also a higher chance of it not flying off with your best lure and leaving you looking like a fool in front of the entire royal hunting party. The degree to which these often elite, scholarly written treatises directly influence the daily practices of more common or less literate falconers, versus the ongoing primacy of local oral traditions and hands-on apprenticeship, is an ongoing discussion among historians of sport and rural life. It's likely there was a complex interplay, with ideas perhaps filtering down from the written texts. While practical, local knowledge continued to be the bedrock for most everyday practitioners. What is undeniable is that this combination of master to apprentice teaching and the growing body of written wisdom created a remarkably sophisticated and resilient tradition. The medieval falconer was often not just a skilled animal handler, they were a keeper of ancient lore, a practitioner of a complex science, and a participant in a cultural heritage that stretched back for centuries. Their wisdom, whether learned from the lips of a master or from the carefully inked pages of a treasured basnama, was the invisible thread that connected them to generations of falconers past and ensured that the gentle art would continue to soar through the medieval skies. You've journeyed through the long, patient, and surprisingly complicated world of medieval falconry training. You've witnessed the careful selection of the wild raptor, the artful capture, the delicate and demanding process of manning and waking, the meticulous training to the fist and the lure, the careful entering onto quarry, the specialized techniques for both high-flying falcons and agile woodland hawks, the constant attention to diet and condition, the daily care within the mews, the anxieties of potential loss, and the deep well of wisdom passed down through master falconers and ancient treatises. And now, after all this immense dedication, this profound investment of time, skill, and empathy, what is the ultimate culmination? The true reward for the medieval falconer. It is that moment, repeated time and again in the open field, when human and bird act as one, a seamless, silent partnership in the sky, a bond forged in patience and understanding that transcends the vast gulf between species. This is the heart of the gentle art, the creation of a hunter's silent sky partner. Imagine yourself now, no longer as an apprentice struggling with a rebellious haggard, but as a master falconer, your years of experience etched into the lines around your keen eyes. On your gloved fist sits a magnificent bird. Perhaps a peregrine you have trained from an eyas, or a once wild saker whose fierce spirit you have gently, patiently, bent to a cooperative will. There's no fear now between you, only a deep, mutual understanding. A language spoken not in words, but in subtle shifts of weight, in the angle of a feathered head, in the almost imperceptible tensing of talons on leather. You are a team, a perfectly synchronized hunting unit. When you cast your bird into the air, it is not just releasing a trained animal, it is unleashing a part of yourself, a keen-eyed extension of your own will and intention, yet one that retains all its wild, breathtaking grace and predatory power. It's like being a conductor leading a very small, very independent, and incredibly talented orchestra of one, where the music is the silent poetry of flight and the dramatic crescendo is the successful hunt. All right, my beauty, you might whisper as you unhood your falcon. The sky is yours, but remember our little agreement about sharing the spoils, and try not to show off too much for the visiting duke. His own birds are a bit pedestrian, and we wouldn't want to cause a diplomatic incident with our sheer awesomeness. This partnership was unique. It wasn't the relationship one had with a dog, however loyal, nor with a horse, however valuable. A hunting raptor, even when fully trained, was never truly domesticated in the same way. It always retained its wild spirit, its fierce independence. A key historical fact is that a trained falcon or hawk always had the option, in theory, to simply fly away and never return. The fact that it did return, that it chose to cooperate with the falconer, to share its kill, was a testament to the strength of the bond that had been forged. A bond built not on coercion, which would ultimately fail with such a creature, but on trust, positive reinforcement food, and a deep, almost intuitive, interspecies communication. The bird hunted with the falconer, not merely for them in a purely utilitarian sense, The aesthetic and almost spiritual satisfaction derived by the medieval falconer from this partnership was immense. To watch your perfectly trained bird wait on high above, a tiny speck against the clouds, and then to see it plummet in that breathtaking stoop, striking its quarry with unerring precision, was a moment of pure, exhilarating beauty. It was a display of nature's perfection, artfully guided by human skill. There was a profound sense of shared achievement, of a harmony between human and wild that was rarely found elsewhere in the often brutal medieval world. This bond was celebrated in art and literature, as we've seen. The image of the noble falconer with their bird became a powerful symbol of aristocracy, of skill, of a certain refined connection to the natural world. But beyond the public symbolism, there was often a deep, private affection between the falconer and their individual birds. Treatises often speak of the need to understand each bird's unique temperament, its personality. Some birds were bold, others more timid, some were quick learners, others more challenging. The falconer had to adapt their methods, their very approach, to the individual character of each feathered companion. It's like being a really good teacher who understands that not all students learn in the same way. Except your students have talents and a tendency to fly off if they get bored with your lesson plan. A quirky and rather touching tidbit from some medieval lore is the idea that a truly great falcon might possess an almost human-like intelligence or loyalty, sometimes even seeming to mourn its master or perform feats of incredible devotion. While these stories are likely romanticized, they speak to the deep emotional investment that falconers often had in their birds. The loss of a prized long-term hunting partner could be a source of genuine grief, not just financial or sporting loss. Ethologists and historians continue to analyze the complex cognitive and emotional capacities of raptors, and how these might have been perceived and engaged by medieval falconers in forming such effective working relationships. While we must be careful not to overly anthropomorphize these wild creatures, it's clear that a successful medieval falconer was a master of applied animal psychology, understanding motivation, fear, reward, and the subtle cues of avian communication with a depth that is still admirable today. The legacy of this profound bond, this silent partnership, is not just in the continuation of falconry as a traditional sport, now recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. As we noted in our Persian exploration, it's also in what it tells us about the human capacity for connection with the wild. Our ability to form partnerships based on respect and understanding rather than just brute domination. The medieval falconer, through countless hours of patient training, transformed a fierce, independent predator into a willing ally, a silent sky partner. It was a relationship that required constant attention, unwavering dedication, and a deep appreciation for the untamed spirit of the bird itself. So, as you picture that medieval falconer, their gaze lifted to the skies, watching their magnificent birds soar and hunt, you are witnessing the culmination of an incredibly complicated, surprisingly gentle, and profoundly rewarding journey. It is a bond forged not in chains, but in trust, not in fear, but in a shared, thrilling purpose. It is the silent, beautiful song of a partnership between two very different hunters, echoing down to us through the centuries, a timeless testament to the enduring art of the falconer. And so, as the last falcon gracefully returns to the gloved fist, its wild spirit in momentary willing accord with its human partner, our journey through the surprisingly complicated world of medieval falconry training gently concludes. We have followed the path from the wild sky to the patient hand, witnessing the immense dedication, the profound understanding, and the almost mystical bond that defined this ancient art. It was a world of keen eyes, swift wings, and a quiet, intricate dance between human and bird. A partnership that demanded not just skill, but a deep reverence for the natural world. As the images of hooded raptors, of patient falconers, and of thrilling aerial pursuits begin to soften and fade into the quiet of your surroundings, may you carry with you a sense of the patience, the dedication, and the unique interspecies connection that this gentle art embodied. Let the thrill of the hunt give way to a peaceful calm, and may your dreams be as clear and far-seeing as a falcon's gaze, soaring effortlessly through the untroubled skies of your own restful night. Sweet dreams.